You'd be surprised what comes up in conversation when paleontologists spend long days in the field. Some of it is deep time in ancient ecosystems. Some of it is, well, trying to remember our fourth favorite hat. This is Fourth Favorite Hat, a look into real dig site chatter of the Montana Dinosaur Center. Each episode brings you the work, the stories, the arguments, the questions, and the odd tangents that emerge when you put scientists, shovels, fossils, and too much sun in the same place. And yes, every guest still has to answer the only question that really matters. What's your fourth favorite hat? Let's get started.
Hello, my name is Andy, and my fourth favorite hat is my South Dakota Badlands dad cap.
I'm Bret, and my fourth favorite hat is my Lake Champlain Lake Monsters baseball cap.
I'm Bryce, and my fourth favorite hat is my wide-brimmed Denver Zoo hat.
We are going to continue our talk about the geologic timescale. Last episode, we covered the Precambrian eons and then the first era of the Phanerozoic eon. We went throughout the Paleozoic, covered all the periods of it, and now we are starting with the Mesozoic. If you have any questions about the stuff prior, go back and listen to last episode. Otherwise, we are good to start with the first subdivision of the Mesozoic. This is going to be the Triassic period. The Triassic period is starting after the worst mass extinction we have, the end Permian mass extinction, or the Permian-Triassic mass extinction, where about 95% of life dies. So as a result of that, the life that survives gets real funky real quick, and the Triassic sort of represents that age of rebirth in a poetic sense. And we see a lot of exciting groups start to diversify. The Triassic is when the first dinosaurs will start to appear. First true dinosaurs are going to be closer to the end of it, but dinosaurs will appear, as well as a lot of their different relatives.
Currently, isn't the oldest currently known dinosaur Nyarasaurus, which is like 236 million years or some such?
Yes.
Which is like the earliest, I guess, or yeah, the oldest portion of the late Triassic.
Nyasasaur. Yeah, am I saying that right? Nyasasaurus is currently our oldest confirmed dinosaur. So we do see a lot of things called Dinosauriformes and Dinosauromorpha, which are, it's getting close to a dinosaur. But Dinosauria is where it finally has enough features to be considered a dinosaur. So this fella is about 243 million years old, which pretty old.
Pretty old.
Actually, from the middle Triassic then, not even the late Triassic.
Yeah, the previous ones like Herrerasaurus was considered to be one of the oldest previously.
Yeah. Eoraptor as well.
Before new dinosaurs were found.
Yeah. So this is sort of the exciting thing about doing this podcast is there is updated information that we have to teach y'all about and also teach each other about. This is a fairly recent discovery, all things considered. Dinosaurs will start to form, but a large grouping, the most dominant of all the terrestrial vertebrates, are the archosaurs, which dinosaur is a part of, but it's also got pseudotsuchians, which are relatives of crocodiles, and the pterosaurs. They're far from the only thing. We get exciting stuff, like we get relatives of these true amphibians. Lots of fish diversity occurs. Just a lot of interesting things going on.
Some other things that are still be around after the Permian are going to be synapsids. So those are the kind of proto-mammals, like the cynodonts. Those are going to still be around during the Triassic, and by the end of the Triassic, they're actually going to give way to the first true mammals, which show up at the very end of the Triassic.
There is a period of time where our closest non-mammalian relatives, non-mammalian cynodonts, and mammalian relatives were coexisting. There's also a bunch of weird reptiles going on that aren't in Archosauria, so we start to see marine reptiles start to take precedence. There's the group Sauropterygia, which has like plesiosaurs, which will go on to the Cretaceous, but also some cousins like nothosaurs, placodonts, which don't make it past the Triassic. We also see ichthyosaurs, those sort of dolphin-like fellas, evolve. And then there's also these tree-dwelling guys called drepanosaurs. I don't even know how to describe them. They have such weird hands, and some of them might even have like a finger on their tail. Dear listeners, just Google drepanosaur, Drapanosaur. Oh, such funky little fellas. I love them.
Very weird animals as far as reptiles go.
Like, they have the same hand bones as us, but the things that, like, Drepanosaurus does with its hand bones is like, why'd you do that? It's enlarged first digit, and they would have been like tree climbers as best we can assess.
Yeah, when you see like really weird body plans like this that don't really have good modern analogs, it can be sometimes tough to tell exactly what they're for. But
Some people theorize they were actually burrowers because of how developed their forelimbs are. And you know what? Fair enough.
you can look at animals today that have both burrowing fingers that are close to that and like tree living animals that have fingers close to that, like sloths. So
Mhm.
Mm.
kind of could go either
Sometimes,
way.
yeah, it could also be like an adaptation for like acquiring food as well, like the eye lemur, which has the really long, weird fingers that it uses to spear grubs out of
Uh,
tree hollows.
I'm gonna say it here and now. I'll die on this hill. I cannot imagine something evolving to be like an eye twice.
Yeah, eyes are kind of weird.
Like,
They're wacky little guys.
I get how conversion evolution works. I cannot imagine the eye being that ideal form that happens a second time.
Yeah, it seems it's just a little too specialized.
Mm.
Like, okay, saber teeth where it has large canines. You can do a lot with that. With a prehensile elongated digit, it's like, what are we gonna do with this? But besides all sorts of exciting animals coming about, we see that the Triassic still has Pangea. Pangea is going to start to break apart at the end of the Triassic. Because of Pangea, things called mega monsoons, where there would be rainstorms that basically went across the whole supercontinent, which is beyond anything we would have seen something like today. Bret had brought this up, and I looked into it. I had thought the Triassic was called that because it was the first of the three periods of the Mesozoic. No, there were three rock deposits of it found in Germany.
It's always funny how they get their names because some of them seem like fairly obvious and some of them are kind of like weird, like the different periods.
Like,
Like the Triassic is because there was three formations. It's like, huh, that's
I
strange.
don't feel foolish
It
in
is.
saying it made sense for it to, like, oh, it's the first of three periods. Yeah, try.
Yeah, I could definitely
Happy
see that.
coincidence.
But like some of the other ones are a bit more like obvious. It's called Cretaceous because Cretaceous means chalk deposit because it was found in chalk deposits.
Hmm.
So that makes a lot more sense than there was just three of these in Germany specifically, not even like in the world.
Yeah. And then there's the epics of the Triassic. Those are usually going to be named after locations that they're found near. Stuff like that. The Carnian, which is in the earliest of the late, is named after Carnia, which is a region of Italy. It was found near there. Okay, makes sense. But like, there are three outcrops of it in Germany. It's such a wild thing to name a whole time span off of.
Yeah.
There's also stuff going on with the flora of the Triassic. There's an interesting phenomenon called the coal gap, where after the Permian Triassic extinction, there is a lack of coal deposits, which then return later. And I don't think we have a great reason as to why. Some hypothesize that the acid rain of the Permian Triassic just kind of prevented coal from depositing, like the peat buildup.
I've
It's
heard
a
that it was also people say it might have been too warm because of all the warming happening at the end of the Permian
mhm.
or like a lot of accumulation.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then stuff like phytoplankton in the ocean has a sizable bloom. Now, everything seems to be looking up pretty well, yeah? Like, everything's gonna be good forever, right?
Unfortunately, not. The end of the Triassic period, we have our next of our five big mass extinctions, the end Triassic mass extinction. It's mostly going to be happening in the oceans. It does happen some on land, but it's definitely more going on in the oceans than on land. It's kind of unknown what happened.
There,
We know that it's kind of related to the breakup of Pangea and
mhm.
volcanism underwater with Central Atlantic Rift happening.
This is one of the ones that has a cute little abbreviation. It's the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP.
Camp, yeah.
So it's very fun to be like, yeah, CAMP killed off about 70% of the marine species.
Yeah, quite a sad time for the people in the ocean.
Mhm.
Still pretty bad for people on land,
Yeah.
but not as bad as, some of the earlier ones we've seen.
The fellas who get hit pretty hard on land are going to be the Cenozoians. They were those crocodile relatives who were more or less dominant before dinosaurs were. The roles that dinosaurs would fill later were filled by the Cenozoians.
Yeah, they kind of just fulfilled like every ecological niche. You had like a wide variety of like these herbivorous pseudoseuchians who were like adosaurs, ranging up to like more traditional like crocodile-looking ones, but they were basically everywhere.
You get Postosuchus, which a lot of times when people say like, wow, a crocodile's basically a dinosaur, I'm willing to be like, actually. But like with Postosuchus, it's like, all right, you get a pass.
Yeah, people often kind of point out that a lot of the Cenozoicians from this time period look more like dinosaurs than the actual dinosaurs from that time did.
Yeah, from a purely superficial level, yeah. I get where they're coming from. This will lead to the Jurassic. There's a lesser known book series and film franchise based off of this name. Have you guys ever heard of Jurassic Park?
I
Jurassic
can't say
Park.
that I have.
Yeah.
No,
No, it's a pretty
tell me
good
about
one.
it.
There's a billionaire who makes a park with dinosaurs in it.
Hmm.
Oh, like from the
How-
Jurassic period?
What let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, Jurassic Park has a few Jurassic dinosaurs, like the Brachiosaurus.
Stegosaurus too,
Stegosaurus.
albeit that's not really in the
Is
in
that
the
in the
first movie at least.
is it in the book?
I think
There's a
Stegosaurus was like
Stegosaurus.
mentioned in the like the table that showed like all the dinosaurs, but I don't think they ever actually encountered it.
Yeah, a lot of the prominent ones are Cretaceous.
Yeah.
But I guess Cretaceous Park didn't have the ring to it, which is a shame. The Jurassic has a lot of exciting things going on.
This is when like half of the more charismatic dinosaurs start showing up. We get a bunch of the long necks, ranging from like Apatosaurus and Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus. We also get ourselves like the Stegosaurs, as well as big old carnivore like Allosaurus and things like that.
We also get the
Ceratosaurus.
first true birds. Archaeopteryx, the currently oldest known true bird. Birds still had teeth at this point, and the oldest ankylosaurs, the fellas I love the most, they're going to be showing up actually at the end of the Jurassic. They're mostly a Cretaceous dinosaur. That's when most of their diversification happens, but they do show up. You get stuff like Pelta. The Jurassic period, this is where the first true frog is coming from. We've got a lot of crown group mammals. This is when crocodilomorphs are going to become more so aquatic. Plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs are now the dominant marine reptiles. Pterosaurs diversify incredibly much. Teleost fish evolve. 96% of all current fish species are a teleost.
They're also called rayfin fish.
They're a
It's
specific
more-
type of
yeah.
rayfin fish. And then plants are going to be dominated by ferns. Ferns have always been pretty successful, but you also get like conifers and cycads. Specifically, we don't really get flowering plants yet. As much as I love Land Before Time, Littlefoot wouldn't have been eating soft tree stars. He would have been eating pine needles. Additionally, Pangea has broken up into two smaller but still considered supercontinents, Gondwana and Laurasia. This is where we get the Tethys Ocean going between the continents.
We see like a lot of big diversity happening through this because of
Mhm.
the extinction at the end of the Triassic. Bryce mentioned this last episode with the Jurassic, also the Age of Belemnites, some people call it.
I mentioned that.
Oh, Andy mentioned that. I thought it was Bryce.
I mentioned it because I'd never heard it called that before.
Yeah, very British thing to say. Of course, in England, they have what's called the Jurassic Coast. That's where they found lots of fossils and where a lot of the first paleontology actually happened, where they would find these kind of like weird skulls from these marine reptiles or things like belemnites. They wouldn't really know what they are. And they had to, bring them back and study them.
Yeah,
Kind of some of the first paleontologists.
Yeah, Mary Anning. She discovered a lot of marine reptiles, which I genuinely got to imagine just seeing a dragon for the first time and trying to decipher that. Because some of these marine reptiles she discovered were pretty fearsome looking creatures.
Yeah, imagine finding like the skull of like a big ichthyosaur and you're not really sure what that is.
Mhm.
Mm.
In fact, the tongue twister, she sells sea shells by the seashore is Mary Anning. She unfortunately was in a time where women weren't allowed to be scientists and had to sell her discoveries to men who would take the credit for her.
Very unfortunate.
We try to give her proper recognition for all the work she did do, starting the study of not just Jurassic marine creatures, but just in general of paleontology.
Really?
She was a very good fossil finder. The Jurassic is going to be this really abundant time period, largely a very warm time period. There are no ice sheets, really. So your seasons are really going to be like hot and wet versus hot and dry for the most part. And there's some really fearsome animals coming out of this time period. I feel like the predators of the Jurassic are far more scrappy than some of the Cretaceous ones.
Yeah, Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus. It's kind
Yeah.
of like the larger sized predators of the time. Not as big as the Cretaceous of predators, of course. You see them with lots of crazy injuries where they would fight and suffer these big injuries, but then keep living for, years at a time. Famously, like Big Al, if you guys have seen Walking with Dinosaurs, tells the life of one of these allosaurs based on injuries that it lived through.
Allosaurus is also one of the has the unfortunate reality of there being fossilized evidence of it getting hit by a Stegosaurus thagomizer.
Yes, in the pelvic bone.
Yeah, it survived it initially, but then seemingly died of infection later,
Oh,
probably
how
from
could that have
Bret.
happened?
Who can surely say?
Didn't finish his antibiotics
Of course, we're summarizing these things pretty quick,
broadly.
but also, we're kind of Cretaceous specialists. Is that fair to say, lads?
Yes, that's what
Yeah.
we work on primarily.
After the Jurassic is the final part of the Mesozoic. That is the Cretaceous. We're going to see the continents are going to start looking similar to how they will be. They're not there yet, but you can see how they get there. North America itself is going to be subdivided in two by the Western Interior Seaway throughout the late Cretaceous. It's going to be a time of even more dinosaur diversification, plant diversification. We also see the first relatives of the placental and marsupial mammals.
The climate in the Cretaceous is still pretty warm, like the Jurassic. It's not quite as warm, but still very warm. No real permanent ice caps happening on the planet. We actually can find dinosaur fossils in Antarctica from that time period. Antarctica wasn't as far south back then, but we can still find evidence of not only dinosaurs, but also things like crocodiles and plants that are from swamp environments. Very different from today in Antarctica.
This is where the flowering plants start showing up, as well as the first pollinators, a whole host of other things that have survived to modern day, like moon snails, starts popping up around now too.
They got a snail from the moon?
They do. If you go out to the beach, and have you ever seen like those like little bivalve shells that have like the really small, perfectly round holes in them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for when moon snails climbed on top of them, stabbed through the shell, and ate and killed them and ate them.
Dude, the moon is no joke.
No, the moon's crazy. No, the moon snails came about during the big old evolutionary arms race that came about towards the end of the Cretaceous, where predator and prey were just getting more and more extreme defenses and not offenses. So we see a lot more like crushing claws or crabs, a lot more like ways of crushing through shells, more extreme shells. Things start getting bigger, tougher, stuff like that.
Mosasaurs at the end of the Cretaceous show up, and mosasaurs have a very short history, but they show up, bully everything into submission real quick, and then die at the end Cretaceous. Like, they really did the live fast, die young, leave a beautiful corpse story, except a lot of their fossils aren't beautiful. I can say that safely as somebody who's studied them and published on it, but some of them are very gorgeous.
Also, when he says live fast and died young, geologically speaking, they were still around for millions of years.
Yeah. A relative. I'm using geologic relatives, but also there's a lot of interesting things going on in the sea, like Hesperornis, which is a toothed swimming bird, largely marine. There's some really ornate ammonites, so shelled squids. There's a fella named Cretoxyrhina, who's basically a great white shark. It's the Cretaceous equivalent. And there's this famous picture of Cretoxyrhina that always kind of grinds my gears. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's a Cretoxyrhina jumping out of the water to take down a pteranodon. Do you know
I
why
think I
that
have seen that before.
do you know why that irks me so much? Because it's based off of the finding of a pteranodon bone in a Cretoxyrhina's gut contents. Pterosaurs would oftentimes just die and get swept out to sea and then eaten. At no point did we say this thing had developed rocket propulsions to launch out of the air and take down pterosaurs. It was a picture that was kind of done without consulting much of the science. I had to see that one a lot because there's a good amount of Cretoxyrhina in South Dakota, and that's where I got my master's, so I had to get familiar with that.
That's fair.
I don't know if you guys have picked this up about our host Bryce, but he does have a favorite type of dinosaur.
That's true. My favorite dinosaur is Stegosaurus.
He said type of dinosaur.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. Sorry, Bryce studies a specific type of dinosaur, and they proliferate a lot during this time period. So, Bryce, why don't you tell us about rudists?
Yes. Rudists, my absolute favorite. They all go by the name Rudy, if you were wondering. Yeah.
Bryce is always talking about marine heterodont bivalves.
I really am. More than you could possibly understand.
And by that, I mean, I think this is the first time I've heard him say rudest, and it's because I brought it up. Now,
That,
Bryce,
I think you're right on that.
why don't you tell us about your speciality?
As I'm sure you've all gathered by now, dear listeners, I tend to study hadrosaurs, the big old duckbill kind of fellas, and they originated and diversified quite a lot during the late Cretaceous.
It's probably one of the bigger dinosaur diversification events. Is that fair to say?
That is probably true, considering that like the origin of true hadrosaurs is probably somewhere around the Santonian or somewhere in that area, which is like
Mhm.
the third to last epoch of the Cretaceous. And then in that relatively short period of geologic time, they by and large become the most abundantly found dinosaur in basically every formation from that time period onward.
If you've heard us talk about them on our dig site, hands-on expeditions, we'll oftentimes call them the cows of the Cretaceous. Big, hooved herd herbivores. You can find them everywhere. It's a cow.
More or less. They lived in big groups. They like to migrate around, ate every plant they could fit in their mouth, pretty much.
Mm, chewed a lot.
Yeah.
Unlike cows, they could shed their teeth.
Hadrosaurs actually had a structure called the dental battery, which is basically instead of having like one tooth per socket that would get worn down and then you'd be done, the roots in their mouth actually had teeth columns in them, which were teeth on top of teeth on top of teeth, in which like the lower portions of these columns were kind of covered, but the upper portions weren't, and they would chew kind of like back and forth and a little side to side, kind of like a cheese grater. And as those teeth would get worn down and fall out, the tooth column would move on up, and a new tooth would grow at the bottom of the column. If you see like the roots, they're really wacky to look at, just because instead of just like coming off the bottom of the tooth, which you would expect, it kind of is this weird semi-horseshoe shape that it kind of rests in. It's really strange.
Additionally, at the very end of the Cretaceous, we're seeing some very recognizable forms. Not that Stegosaurus or Diplodocus are hard to miss, but we're talking about T-Rex and Triceratops and those sort of fellas. If you let a child run around in a museum, those are probably two of the first ones they could point out.
For sure.
T-Rex is a massive predator designed to crush bones. It bit down and caused explosions in the body. However, for as charismatic as it is, it only lasted for about 3 million years. We talked about the oldest dinosaur being 243 million years old. There's a lot of dinosaur history that did not have T-Rex involved in it.
The vast majority.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets overshadowed because of how, I mean, it's a cool animal. It's very charismatic. It's neat. It's kind of hard not to like T-Rex, but it was only there for a very short period of time. And something I've been asked multiple times, why did it have such short arms? And we can never give you one true answer, but there's a couple things we could say. It didn't need big arms. It had a bite force that could explode a Triceratops, well, parts of it. Like, it didn't really need arms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At a certain point, you just got to reduce things that aren't getting used, and then you can use that bone material for more important things, like a bigger skull.
This is not something unique to Tyrannosaurs either. We see it across most large theropods. As they get bigger, they tend to reduce their arms.
Mhm.
Some of them are a bit more extreme, like the Abelisaurids. The most famous one being Carnotaurus, which is basically doesn't even have arms, is effectively just a big old mouth on legs.
Yeah, but quite frankly, it didn't really need arms. Like, people are like, oh, T-Rex couldn't have painted a picture. I'm like, all right, and
That's kind of a weird argument to make too, because plenty of animals that don't have arms do paint. We actually do have paintings done by rhinos and elephants, and they don't have arms either.
I didn't know about the rhino. I knew about the elephant.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
they can hold it with their lips.
Really?
Yeah, their lips
Huh.
are
They have, like,
prehensile.
kind of like horses.
Huh, I just didn't know that. I know you can like paint with dogs, but that's like getting their paws with paint. Or I shouldn't say you can paint with dogs. I should say you can get dogs to paint.
And you
Probably
like
could also
use
paint with
animals as
dogs.
tools.
I don't know. People make weird arguments. People will ask, what do you think would have happened to T-Rex if it didn't go extinct? What would it have evolved into? And it's a very interesting question. There's a very famous statue someone made of the Dino sapien, which was a hypothesis that I think troodons would evolve into a human-like form because, clearly that's the best form to have. And I'm not of the opinion that's true. Where are you guys at with that?
Probably not in this weird Troodon human hybrid looking guy. That'd be weird.
Humans evolved from like a very different place than them, so like the whole end product will also look very different, I think.
It really is a very human-centric kind of misinterpretation. Anyways, I'm really glad that nothing bad happens at the end of the Cretaceous, right, guys?
I got bad news, Andy.
What?
There's actually another extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous, the last of 5
What?
big extinction events.
The fifth of the big five?
The 5th of the big 5.
Oh,
You're never gonna believe what happened though, Andy.
what happened?
It's really out of this world.
Oh?
Get it?
Oh, you cheeky devil.
At the end of the Cretaceous, there's another big extinction event. This one is caused by a big meteorite that hits the Earth in modern day Mexico. The Chicxulub crater is where it happened.
Off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yes, this was a huge impact, which kind of messed with the Earth in all kinds of different ways. So first off, it's sending off huge earthquakes, tsunamis everywhere across the whole planet, basically, which is, of course, killing many things right there. But then after that, it's kicking up so much dust into the sky that it's basically blocking out sunlight, leading to a whole trophic collapse where basically the plants aren't getting sunlight, so they die. Things that eat the plants die because there's no plants to eat. And then, of course, the predators die because there's nothing left to eat. So we're seeing a huge extinction event.
It's very hard for something big like a T-Rex to survive off of the very tiny mammals like the multituberculates. The amount of energy required to break open its burrow versus the amount of calories gained by eating it puts it at a negative.
The things that survive are things that are smaller, things that don't need to be eating as much food. The stuff that does survive is the small stuff. So all of our non-avian dinosaurs go extinct at the end of the Cretaceous.
Our marine reptiles like our plesiosaurs and our mosasaurs are gone.
Our flying reptiles are also gone now.
And plenty of groups that survive as a whole still witness a loss of species diversity as different species and genera go extinct. We still have crocodiles, but there are plenty of crocodilians that don't make it, for instance. Additionally, groups that make it as a whole, they're not walking away unimpeded. There are plenty of individuals that still suffer from this. It's very hard for us to pin down how long this actually took. Geologically, it's instantaneous, but that could be anywhere from 100 years to 10,000 years.
It's probably on the shorter end of that range because we're seeing that whole collapse. And we also can see that this was a truly global event. At the end of this, we have what's called the KT boundary or the KPG boundary. It's called that because it's actually a physical boundary you can see in rock layers really easily because there's this layer of iridium that you can see. Iridium is a metal that is very common in asteroids and very, very rare on Earth. So the fact that there's this layer that's almost like an inch thick covering the entire planet's surface means that there was all kinds of dust and stuff getting kicked up and then settling down.
It's pretty uniform across the globe.
Yeah, you can see it here in North America, you can see it in Europe, you can see it in Asia. It's really a distinct layer that is kind of what tells us so clearly what happened, other than, of course, the big impact crater as well.
From one side of it to the other, you can always see a very clear shift in rock type. Once an environment changes, the types of rocks being produced also changes rapidly, and this just changed the environment instantaneously, basically.
Yeah, you can look at the differences in the animals as well between them. Like you'll see lots of non-avian dinosaurs right below it, and then above it, of course, you'll see none, but you'll see a lot more mammal diversity.
Yeah, and people will ask, why is it that it's the birds that survived, the avian dinosaurs? And they were very small at the time, but they could fly. Flight is a very good way to travel a long distance, so they could travel in search for food much more easily. Basically, if you didn't die in the impact, you kind of had to compete for a very sparse amount of food with everything else, and it's sort of generations getting weaker and smaller until there's just nothing more to give for a species. It's a scary event, but like after all of the mass extinctions, life survives as a whole. Not everything goes extinct, and we can see bounce backs. That's going to be in our next episode when we cover the Cenozoic, the modern life as it is. But for now, I've been Andy.
I'm Bret.
I'll be Bryce.
Have a good one.
That's one conversation down, and there's millions more waiting for us out in the ancient dirt. If you want to join the crew on their next auditory adventure, subscribe to the Fourth Favorite Hat, the Montana Dinosaur Center podcast, available wherever podcasts are distributed. You can follow the museum on social media at TM Dinosaur Center, visit tmdinosaurcenter.org, or swing by the museum in Bynum, about 80 minutes north of Great Falls on Highway 89. Thanks for listening.